We're live, as promised. Seattle Overload live to you again, and only 22 minutes late. Apologies. Just building. I mean, American events never start on time, and I felt we were building anticipation. And
That's
we'll
true.
keep
If this was
talking.
a Kanye West concert, we wouldn't have even started for the next hour and a half or something. So,
And then we'd have come down, as almost like a biblical figure with a spot lamp on us from the heavens. Very impressive stuff.
yes. Instead, Geno Smith will be descending from the heavens this Monday night to defeat the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football
Or
on ESPN.
ascending to the heavens.
All too true.
Transcending.
But before we do the Broncos
He'll be
preview,
passing between and through planes, different planes of existence.
Yeah.
the divide, the sea. But before we do the Broncos preview, and we're already dealing with VAR today, very professional, we have exciting news as a podcast. And that is that the Seattle Overload podcast has signed a multi-year, or as you guys would say, multi-year deal with Odyssey, which is exciting because they're going to help us get ads. So for you guys, it probably means you'll just hear more ads. We'll also be 3 times a week in season, so that's cool. And that will mean we'll do instant reaction, we'll do little press conference stuff, and then tape stuff, X's and O's, all that goodness, what you like us for, I think. But yeah, it's a proper company. They're great people. They're going to help us be a bit more professional and better. And it wouldn't have happened without your support and your listenership and all of that good stuff. And already we have Camden saying, "What's up?" And, well, she said, "Yo." And we have Wolfpack 100 saying, "Congrats." So thank you very much. We're really excited about it. And yeah, just to echo, wouldn't happen without you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're really looking forward to it.
Thank you all. We will do our best so that you all see return on investment here. We want to make our stockholders happy.
Yes. Please join us at the first of every month for our monthly shareholder meeting. We will not be accepting any ideas at this point, though. Thank you for your understanding.
And I'm going to do my best to block out the sun here.
Already transitioning to professional podcasting.
So I'm like multitasking throughout the whole thing. Eventually the sun will go down. And then won't be a problem. But until then.
And then it will come up again. Beautiful. Absolutely lovely. Right. So
well,
there was
actually,
this
the
article.
sun is fixed in space. Well, the galaxy's moving, right? Oh, shoot. I don't remember my astronomy 101 class. The sun is fixed in the galaxy, but the galaxy is moving. So technically the sun's moving too. But relative,
the sun
moving.
rises in the west and then sets in the east. Is that correct? Yeah. Nailed it.
And Z is a vowel. Okay.
I know that Camden wanted to know if the Broncos have a fullback. They do. His name is Andrew Beck.
Interesting.
Okay.
How will they use the fullback?
Before the Broncos, though, there was an article written by Brady Henderson of ESPN, and it caused a stir. It came out today. It was sort of detailing the Russell Wilson Seahawks breakup. I'm not actually sure personally how much new information there was necessarily. I think it was just more detail, and my main takeaway was, wow, this is like any human relationship really where things have gone south either side. I think sort of what we said, where that both parties have sort of pushed each other away and over time grown apart. Like, very sad. Mum and dad have broken up, that sort of thing. But well, firstly, do you agree with that? And then secondly, was there anything that stood out to you as being interesting other than the fact that certain parts appeared to be written by Mark Rodgers?
I mean, yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree that nothing felt new. And at first, my initial reaction was, well, the timing feels weird that this was written. But then I thought, well, no, it doesn't. They're not covering. Brady Henderson isn't covering the breakup so much as he's covering Monday Night Football. So it makes sense that ESPN would dip their hand into this story, which has been dipped into by like 3 other outlets, prominent ones. But I think Brady Henderson does his homework. So the fact that, we know that he made the rounds with people that he thought were important to the story, and that he came away with essentially the same conclusions as everyone else, give or take a detail or two, right? It probably hammers home that this is the story and these are the perspectives from both sides of the team, that there's not a lot being left out. Now maybe there is, as far as what led to certain like positions that each side took, like how you get from A to Z maybe. But all in all, yeah, I would summarize it the same way you would, Matty. I don't think a lot of the rift was over the what so much as in like, what does Russ have versus what is he wanting? I feel like, the best honest assessment I can come up with is that by the end, or I saw lots of effort by the team to kind of, I don't know if placate is the right word, but meet the demands or do what, to kind of word it more friendly to Russ, to do the things that a team needs to do to show that they're really trying to win. I felt like they did that. So, and I assume Russ is a rational actor, and that I think it's hard to disagree with that they did do those things. So that leads me to believe that the relationship broke down, not over where they ended, but kind of how they got there. And
once
the nature.
Once the seed's been planted,
like
in the mind in the mind, it's sort of like, while the Seahawks were listening in couples counseling, it's like Russ was sort of like, I'm kind of, moving towards being off this, and they sort of got there eventually. But the MVP fixation thing, that seems to bother him. And I guess, why not try a new place to try it? If you think you're that guy who can go and do that, and the Seahawks are trying to do things to help you, but ultimately they're coming from a slightly different spot. You also know how they think in different ways about things. And you know who they are ultimately. Like, you can't change that much.
And by the way,
sorry, go ahead, Ty.
Sorry, just real quick, like on the MVP fixation thing, that part rubbed me the wrong way, and I would assume rubbed the Seahawks the wrong way as well. Specifically when it comes to that Atlanta game that Brady wrote about in his article. Remember they got off to a 24-0 start, and then Brady talks about, he only threw 5 passes in the second half, and he was pissed off at Pete because, for not being more aggressive. But basically he was more pissed off because he wanted to grab reins of the MVP race with Lamar Jackson on a bye week, instead of, the reasoning for him being pissed not being the fact that, they gave up 20 unanswered to Matt Schaub and the Falcons, and they only won that game by 7. Like, his priorities are messed up at that point. Like, he's not worried about like how that impacted the team in that moment, not being aggressive, how it impacted him and his hopes for the MVP. Like, that part, like,
now, to be fair, I agree that was where his heart is actually at with it. Now, I don't disbelieve that he wants to win either, but I think that part of it, elements of that, was probably sourced from the not Russ camp about the MVP part. Like, Brady.
Well,
probably
what does, if that came from the Russ camp, what does that, paint him in a slightly bad light? So why would they?
If I had to guess, Brady probably extracted that Russ had contention over the Atlanta game, and then goes and cross-references it with someone from Seattle's side, which isn't necessarily Pete or Schneider. A lot of times they have to go in the back door with some lower level assistant, right? And then that could be them. Well, Russ really wants to win MVP because publicly Russ has always said, which we all know isn't true, and I'm not faulting him for taking that position either necessarily, but publicly he's always said, "Oh, I don't care about the MVP." Like, yes, you do. Like, you've publicly said that legacy is important to you. You want to break away.
He wants to be the
wanna win
Derek
it.
Jeter.
You
He wants to
definitely
be the
wanna
Tom
win
Brady.
MVP,
He's
bro.
said
Come
that
on.
multiple. Yeah, he said that time and
Yeah.
time
It's
and time
the
and time again.
inauthentic nature of some of his stuff that is understandably grinding for people, and including myself actually.
Mhm.
The other thing with this as well is like, what's like the, what's Russell's camp trying to get at this? They're not trying to sway the opinion or boost the PR of Russell to Seahawks fans, right? This is for like a national audience where if you look at like a lot of the comments and reactions to this, it's kind of buying into the, meme Pete Carroll, aren't the Seahawks stupid for trading Russell? I think he does pretty well out of the article. Not that Brady wasn't fair and balanced and multi-sourced and all of that good stuff. He's obviously very one of the best at this sort of stuff. But I still think the national perception is of the Seahawks being silly and they didn't have to trade him and that sort of thing, and people fixating on the Drew Lock, ha ha ha, that was Schneider's quarterback. So, well, that's that's an unfortunate sentence on its own. But if you think about the context here, like Russell wanted to go to these teams, and look, the only one with a quarterback who was fairly interesting was Denver with Drew Lock. And sure, you can talk yourself into the toolsy aspects of his game, but they weren't. But they were. And yes, you pump him up in the press to try and get him to compete at his best after his confidence has been damaged. He's been beat down a bit as an early player. And yes, there's still some stuff there with Locke, even though I think we probably know he's never going to be it. But
and by the way, like real quick with the Locke stuff too, like there's a lot of context that's taken out from some of the screenshots that we're seeing being posted of that paragraph on Twitter, because like you look at the paragraph before that and the paragraph even before that one, it explains like, okay, the Commanders called, the Giants called, but we don't really know what their level of interest was, or rather what Russ's level of interest was and what the teams were willing to actually give up. And then the Saints were basically just being kind of led on to drive up the price from Denver. That didn't seem like that was actually a real possibility there. And I mean, even then, taking those four teams into account, let's just talk about the quarterbacks that were on those respective rosters the day that Russ was traded. Daniel Jones, Taylor Heineke, Taysom Hill, Drew Lock, Ian Book, Brett Rippon, Jake Fromm, Davis Webb. There's no one there that I'm like, I don't really think that it was about like, oh, we have to trade with the Broncos because I want Drew Lock, or like there's like this narrative suddenly being created that the Seahawks basically gave up getting more just so they could get Drew Lock, and that's not at all the case here. I think it was just of the group of quarterbacks that they had at their disposal here that they could have potentially landed, Taylor Heineke or Daniel Jones really being the only other ones that would be under consideration here. They preferred Lock. Right. Yeah. And they saw a likelier path to landing Lock than with Jones or Heineke. And also on top of that, the Giants were the only team out of these four that had higher picks in 2022 than the Broncos did. So that's another thing to keep in mind here. And it's also like, did Russ even want to go to New York? Did he actually?
Well, he definitely did at one point.
Yeah, he did at one point, but did he still want to? Did he still want to play for, does he want to play for Brian Daboll? That's the whole rabbit hole that we can go down. But yeah.
Ultimately, it should go without saying that Drew Lock was the single most inconsequential aspect of this trade. And not to straw man, I think that people bring it up just because Drew Lock is a meme at this point, and, people are just going to dwell on that stuff. But yeah, it's Drew Lock was not hinged. He was not, he might as well have not existed here. Like, come on. Yeah, I think ultimately it wasn't about the what so much as how they got there. And that process of how they got from A to Z is probably what led to interpersonal relationships fracturing, and then games of telephone, further driving the wedge. And at a certain point, it was just, beyond saving. Now, that said, the person that was the most invested in trying to keep it all together was Pete Carroll. That's what all the articles have said.
He came out of this kind of great because it was like Pete was constantly like,
He came out of
but we
this
love Russell.
as he
Pete,
came out
Russell's
of
guy.
this as someone that greatly values the quarterback position. In fact,
And you know how Griff, you said not much more's come out, and we probably won't get the finer details of this. Like we're not going to hear an audio recording of the day it went down and the discussions. Unfortunately, this ain't like all access stuff. But the point in which Pete was like, let's go do it. That would be really interesting. And in my opinion, I reckon it's probably like just talking with Russ, and Russ just been like, hey, you know what? Yeah, it came close. The 2021 off season, 2022. He's probably just like, Pete, please. I think we can just. And Pete probably broke his heart, but also, let your guys go. Like I think Pete. I think it was like an agreeable thing towards the end, even if it got messy in the media and the PR sort of spin, which inevitably happens. And don't get me wrong, like the Seahawks, they went kind of all in on Russ in their statements, like unusually so for a team, saying that he wanted it, basically,
And the one thing I'm always going to be, me personally, I'm going to be extremely rigid about is that, I mean, first of all, the word philosophy can mean anything, right? But ultimately, I will never agree to the idea that this was over philosophical differences, because that presumes that Pete's philosophy can't accommodate Russ's wishes. And like, I mean, we're just talking like football here, like not kind of like the economics of roster building and stuff, which even there's an argument to be made in both directions, I think. But like, there's nothing that Russ wants that Pete is opposed to. Football wise. So I don't know. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, leave it at that, Griff, because now we get to actually talk about how you would defend Russell Wilson. We can finally beat the guy rather than being frustrated by his weaknesses and admiring his strengths. We can now be excited by his weaknesses and afraid of his strengths, which is so weird.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of glad this is all week one where we can just get it out of the way with. And
right.
So how much of a Russell Wilson offense is this, Griffin, in week one of the NFL season?
Just parsing from what we've got from Denver folks, there's been a lot of like quotes and stuff. The offensive linemen have said it's all about the outside zone, establishing the run, which is something an offensive lineman will say no matter how much you do. And then they've said that, play action is really important. And they've said the deep ball is really important. Cortland Sutton or some of the receivers have said how we have the initial play, then we also have the second play, the scramble drill. And then we've also seen in the Denver preseason, they're gun running a little bit. So that means it's like a gun inside zone, like that element exists. And like we've talked about for the Seahawks, that is the single biggest marker of what your overarching kind of structure flows from. Of course, it doesn't tip precise plays, but there's a lot there. Now, granted, Green Bay did gun run, but that was just so that they could RPO, really. So it's for different reasons than Russ would gun run or Hackett would. So all those things considered, I think for the most part, and that's been a point of debate. For the most part, this is going to be the Russell Wilson offense as we've come to know it in terms of on paper, right? So from there, I mean, we'll dive right in, and Matty, if you want to follow up there, you can. But I feel like the single biggest thing as far as Broncos offense versus Seahawks defense, the single biggest consideration is going to be the Broncos trying to get Cortland Sutton into one-on-one coverage, and Seattle trying to prevent that from happening pre and post snap. And the entire game plan will flow from that principle in under center and in gun. It will all be based around that element, and everything else will be counters to the counters, establishing tendency, breaking tendency, all trying to manipulate the box numbers and the coverage shell and the techniques and et cetera, to get Cortland Sutton one-on-one, because that ultimately is what will make or break the game, I think, at least with, considering like base structure and stuff.
It sounds like Sutton is he's the guy I picked up in fantasy football,
just a good pick.
Like a soulless, moralless, moral compass lacking person. No, but
So
yeah, he seems like Russ's guy. It seems like they've established a connection, and I think to add to that, Griff, I think the one difference we see potential difference is perhaps more empty formation usage, but then you can only do so much of that. And John Carey in the comments goes, Griff talk about min maxing, and you can only min max so often. Like it's good you've got some min maxing fans here, but I think they do try to do a bit more empty, and I do think perhaps maybe they start the game going up tempo, and that can be a very quick 3 and out as well as it can be a very quick, touchdown drive. But I don't know. I think there's a bit of that sort of flavor, a bit more of that accent being obvious. But yeah, it is really about Sutton 1-on-1. Judy is sort of a complementary piece to that. Albert O at tight end. Interesting, but I don't know if we can trust Russ to hit tight end as much as there's been hype out of camp, as much as he seems to be like a ridiculously talented, high ceiling tight end.
And we should quickly mention some of the guys that are going to be missing in this game. Greg Dulcich, one of the top tight ends from this past draft, he's on the IR. Tim Patrick, of course, I believe, was that an Achilles, ACL, something? He's out for the year. So that's a pretty big blow. I believe that he and Russ were connecting pretty early on as well. So that's a big blow. But of course, they still have KJ Hamler and Judy and Sutton. Secondly, we have a Seahawks depth chart. Who knows how much stock to actually put into that, but I think this is kind of relevant to the conversation that we're having right now. They have Mike Jackson and Tariq Woolen listed as the 2 starters. So how do you feel about those guys going up against this receiving core?
Well, that feels unnecessary to do as well, doesn't it? Like, because that depth chart is very wrong. Like, it has Collier still on it, and it's got Jake Curhan starting at right tackle rather than what we presume will be Abraham Lucas. But to outright put Jackson and Woolen on there, it seems like surely you'd go with the default veteran thing. But
right
you
now,
go like Burns or Sydney,
maybe it's a feint. Now, it's really annoying though that because I mean in my head I just had, all right, if it's not Sydney and Trey, let it be Sydney and Artie. But it doesn't even sound like Artie's been playing right corner, which he did in Chicago.
And he spent a bit of time there very early in camp, but then we only saw him at left corner in the preseason, very limited preseason action that he got. And for him to do that in game 3 suggested that he'd been working at left corner, for that recent time frame.
And like I think we all find Mike Jackson like inspiring and kind of are rooting for him and think he can have a higher floor than some might think. Tariq Woolen is exciting in general, but then it's also exciting in bad ways too, because he's just so green and all the things we've talked about in previous episodes. So that will definitely be interesting. And if it's not the veterans out there for health, or maybe they didn't win the battle, the training camp and preseason battle, that will definitely influence how they scheme as well. But so let's get into that. So in under center, when the Broncos are under center, right, it's either going to be outside zone or it's going to be play action. I think Seattle will match with Bear, whether it's base or nickel. I think they'll definitely match with Bear. And well, I suspect nickel actually, so that it's easier for them to play half quarter. I don't know if they want to play pure form quarters, because even though you're under center, if they catch you in quarters, you can still call 7-step drop with Russ, no play action, and try to hit that fade or go ball, right? And the reason why that's important for quarters is because you're getting a true one-on-one situation on the outside. You don't really have safety help. You can, depending on the formation and what rules you give your safeties, but I mean, quarters can be playing with fire in terms of the sideline, especially with a guy like Russ, because if we remember, and we'll also get into this, in Russ's matchups with the Rams, he hasn't connected deep a lot, but he's been inches away from a few completions on the backside of half quarter, where they do anything to kind of get that weak safety out of the picture with a crossing route from the opposite side if it's trips or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's just one-on-one DK down the sideline. The issue is that they have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and it's just been hard to connect there. But so that's kind of that's the built-in answer for the Broncos is to catch them in 3-by-1, or they're in 3-by-1 and they catch them in pure firm quarters. It could always be on the outside. But if they don't play quarters to that situation, it will be when they're in gun, and they are in half quarter, trying to get that same element with Cortland Sutton on the weak side opposite of trips. So Seattle will have to game plan what they do there. Do they have the Mike try to close off the middle of the field and have that weak safety double cover the weak one
And
receiver?
the other thing here is I am interested in how Judy and Hamler are pressing vertical, because what Seattle may do is call the cover 2 side, as they have the tool to do, to Cortland Sutton every time, like the Rams did to DK Metcalf, where the cloud is always to DK Metcalf, so the double is always there. That I think we could see that. And the other thing to me is the defense has moved into continued moving in a direction that is advantageous for beating Russell Wilson. Like, if you go back and watch the Chicago Bears game last year and how Russ struggled against their quarter, half quarter coverages, particularly the half quarter stuff, that is kind of the template for what Seattle, and obviously with Sean Desai in the building, is hoping to achieve this time round. Now, Russell will be aware of his weakness against that, but if you just deny him the one-on-one to his favorite target, as the Bears did, removing it to DK Metcalf by playing the half and the cover 2 cornerback to that side, and then you achieve decent quarters layering to the next read on the other side, you sort of remove the 2 outer receivers from the picture, then really good things can happen because of what, Russ is being so close to the outside of the numbers, being so close to the sideline. Now, I that's where I think, the empty kind of quick game elements come in and what more variants they have. But then, as we've already spoke about on this podcast, covered to many lengths, there's only so much of that you can do with Russ. There's only so much stick you can run. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting one to play out. And the coverage dilemma you mentioned, Griff, about the backside quarter, like, I'm pretty sure Jerry Jeudy can run a comeback against quarters. But it'll be interesting. And the Broncos haven't played any preseason football. They're the starters. So how much rust there is, how much sort of figuring out there has to be between Hackett and Russ of like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Their working relationship. There's a lot of factors at play. And But the one thing with the Bear thing is figuring out, like, if you're going to have base personnel on the field, how do you then adapt to if they're, coming out in under center, shifting out into empty, and then not getting caught in a bad matchup, which is why the big nickel package of having a Bear front, but be able to bump that out into something which looks all right against, say, like 11 personnel, using the talents of Conjay Diggs as like a slot / safety, and then using the talents of Jamal Adams as like a tight end up matcher, can be blitzed from the slot, but also can play in the box, using those sorts of deals to play matchups, basically, and be able to stay sound for both kind of deals, under center and gun. That, I think, is going to be a big deal.
All right. Do you guys want to open it up to a couple questions?
Yeah, let's go, Ty.
Let's do it. All right. Camden wants to know, who would you rather shooting a gap, Brooks or Adams?
Oh, depends what gap.
In the situation.
I don't know if Camden was saying a gap or the a gap.
I wondered that too.
I think just any. Who would you rather have?
Any
and is it pass or run? Right? Is this? Because Jordan Brooks was really good as like the Wolf Blitzer last year, Matty, which you can talk about. On the man side of the protection, they would get 3 over 2 week, and he'd knife that really fast. Jamal Adams, though, looked really good as the backside fitter on outside zone when he was away from it and getting all the way through. He made a bunch of plays in the backfield doing that. I think the Colts and the Vikings game, he had examples there. So
Brooks is so good at being able to run downhill very thick and then somehow sort of contort his body to avoid contact while staying incredibly thick. Impressive.
Mm-hmm. All right. John
you
Kerry.
guys hear my dog's cameo at the moment?
Yes, let's go.
Yes. Yeah, let's go. Got a Brady cameo.
Oh, we haven't mentioned the volcano. What the hell, Griff? That's
Oh,
not...
nothing to worry
yeah.
about. Nothing to see here. Move along. Move along.
I don't know if I trust you. I don't know.
You
if I
didn't want to
trust
report it because it was just sensationalist. Is that correct?
you. Mm.
Yeah, I don't. It's like Leslie Nielsen and what is that? An airplane where he's like, nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah.
And there's an explosion going on behind him. But in this case, it's true. It's not state media trying to propagandize you.
Okay, Leslie.
Gotcha.
Remember, I'm a grassroots third party private sector watchdog over the mountains. So if anything happens and I happen to be up there when it happens, I'll tweet about it.
Good. All right. Doing the Lord's work. Shout out to Colby for throwing in the Thydane Gonzalez in here. That's apparently the nickname I've been given by our listeners over at CTZ and Lockdown.
Okay, Thigh.
Yeah, Thigh.
Juicy Thigh.
Yeah, little juicy legs. All right, John Kerry. If Russ puts up huge numbers, is it because the D fails to execute, or Russ starts throwing over the middle?
I think it's because if Russ puts up big numbers, it's two main things. They just find their matchups on the perimeter and they just get lucky and hit them. Not lucky, but like they take advantage, they capitalize. And they're smart in looking for them. And then secondly, I think Russ probably makes some plays out of structure. That doesn't mean out of the pocket necessarily, but just, variance plays, something breaks down. And yeah, I think Seattle might have a bust or two in them. That's totally possible, right?
Yeah, first time
especially if they're
Adams
starting
out there.
Especially if they're starting Woolen and Jackson, and Jackson only has 4 career starts. This will be Woolen's first career start. Like,
right.
Well, because every time we hear
happens
as well about the importance of playing together and chemistry, and yet with preseason being injury risky, people still don't play, and so you inevitably still get the issues from a lack of playing time together in real time. But yeah, and extrapolating that question towards the season, because it could have been talking that. Did I just knock my mic out? No,
I hear you.
Perfect.
No, you're good.
I need to get a new mic cable, professional. But extrapolating that question towards the season, I think that again, I mean, I view it in really sort of adding to what Griffin said, because obviously I agree with that, but I view it in simplistic terms of how if you're running the ball well enough, teams will eventually have to be more +1 in the box. And so they will leave more obvious and more accessible one-on-ones on the outside. And so as much as there's the talk of, letting Russ cook and passing the football, the way defensive coordinators work is, and even like the Staleys of the world, right? Who like box theory and all of that stuff and the trendy things. But eventually, if you're getting the ball run down your throat, you will play middle field closed structure. And so if the Broncos have a good run game and, Javonte Williams is heavily hyped up and Griffin's talked about the offensive lineman talking about outside zone and all this run action stuff. But if they have that, well, then, that's when Russell can be highly productive. And by all accounts, this is a good offensive line. Like it's, especially run blocking wise, Garrett Bowles, Dalton Risner, Lord Cushenberry, Quinn Miners, Billy Turner. Like that's a solid interior blocking trio. I heard that actually the Seahawks wanted Quinn Miners in the Russell Wilson package. And pass pro wise, Bowles, I think that's an interesting matchup versus Darryl Taylor. I'm still not sure on Bowles, even though I believe it all sort of came together for him last year. But Seattle should be able to do some stuff up front, I think.
The matchups up front are really interesting because, I mean, their PFF grades are much different. But when I look at the Broncos offensive line and when I watched Locke, I thought this O-line is fine. Nothing better, nothing worse. And I was like, I got Seahawks vibes from them. Like the Seahawks offensive line, for the most part, when it's healthy, is fine. Has some good stretches, has some bad stretches. But all in all, it's fine. I mean, Bowles is kind of has weird technique, but he's talented and it just makes it work. Risner is, I think, really good, really solid guard. Cushenberry he improved last year, but he doesn't really impress me that much. But if I was a Broncos fan, I'd probably be saying, well, he made a leap last year. Will he make another one? Right. So who knows what he is this year?
Hope.
Right, exactly, as we all do. But I feel like it's fair to say in the one-on-one blocking setting, Woods would still wins that matchup. Their right guard, I'm blanking on his name. He replaced, I think, Glasgow last year.
Well, I think Miners will play there.
Oh, right, Miners. Yeah, Miners. Yeah, I didn't like Miners' college tape. I felt like he was kind of like a meme pick, small school try-hard guy who is undersized. I don't know.
Well, he was.
Yeah, and he had some good games and he had some bad games last year, but enough to like rally around. Like there's promise, but he's not a sure thing yet. Now the right tackle, they signed Billy Turner out of Green Bay. He's been a guard and a tackle, and I think he was a backup for Green Bay. And every time he got prolonged stretches as a starter, he's like, oh, this guy probably should be a starter.
Always seems to happen with Green Bay. Yeah.
Yeah, they always have good development there. So I mean, it's kind of like a 2020 Shell signing there. So honestly, and Shell was really good in 2020 and then fell off in 2021. I think that was mostly injury driven. But I mean, like I see a solid offensive line. I don't see anything monstrous though. And I think Darrell Taylor can give Billy Turner some fits, but I also think Billy Turner also has it in him to zero out Taylor. So I feel like it's just really even matchups.
Good early test, not too difficult, but
it's a good early test, especially for the interior pass rushers, because you're going up against, an interior situation that I think is fine, not anything better than that. So we'll kind of know what they have, what they're going to get out of Puna, Quentin Jefferson, and especially Shelby Harris. I don't really have any concerns about Shelby. I mean, that bull rush looks so live. Looks so real in the preseason. It looked as good as it did when I watched him in the regular season last year. This guy had a really high pressure rate. So, I'm just excited to see what goes there. Now, blocking, the Broncos had issues blocking in preseason. That's preseason, and not all the ones are out there. And when they were, it wasn't for prolonged periods of time. So I don't know, but that's definitely where, like, outside zone, under center running, every team has to do it. And you don't have to be efficient running there in order to play action well. Like, we know that. But given that you have to do it and you can incur negative runs there, that means any positive run is gravy. So you can't let any explosive runs happen. It's their goal. Like, you hear them in press conferences, they're all trying, like, you gotta get explosive, with your running. You got to set the tone. Like, they all talk about the way people say you shouldn't view the run game, but they're going to do it anyway, right? So it's just when they do it, don't let them pop one. Keep those median gains around 2-3 yards. Get some tackles for losses, right? We're going to see them try to fit the run that way out of too high again. Well, they did that last year and they were fine, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But yeah, Matty, like you said earlier, when they're in gun, Russ's adjusted net yards over average, which is just kind of like a better, a more comprehensive yards per attempt measure, really includes sacks and stuff. In the gun on early downs, maybe it isn't early downs, I need to double check this, but he's only had one top 10 season against too high when in the gun, because I specify gun because that's when they're in a drop back scenario.
Yeah. You'd almost think it would be higher, right? But
so only one top 10 season in the last 6 years against too high, all too high coverages combined when in gun, using adjusted net yards over average, or per attempt, not average. But then against one high, like 4 of the last 6 seasons are in our top 10. So the reason why Pete Carroll gun runs is actually for a lot of reasons, but if you put enough runs on tape when you're in gun, even if like your gun pass rate is like 75-80%, if you spend that much time in gun, there's still hundreds of snaps that are gun inside zone. So they're still going to the defense is still going to put out balanced personnel in early downs to try to match that. So, and you do that enough, they might just feel more comfortable, playing more one high or spinning late or something. So,
well, also I feel like trying to dare Russ, because Russ has such a penchant for throwing the alert when you get single high. If you can try and trick him into throwing the alert and defaulting to the alert and not reading out the concept, and then you do spin into too high, then I think that would be a nice approach. But yeah.
Also, it should be noted, Russ's main gun drop back is quick game, because the quick game plays off the fade, and then they use, because you don't have a like substantive five-step drop
Same
back
job,
game,
yeah.
to provide the constraint for the quick game, which provides the constraint for the fade ball. You gun inside zone so that you have some constraint for quick game, so that when you're influencing personnel like packages, but then also the linebackers are changing their average alignment depth and width and stuff, so that you can keep your quick game alive, so that you can keep your fade alive, so you can keep quick game alive, so you can keep inside zone alive, to the point where Seattle's lead back the past 4 years has been more efficient with the average gun inside zone run than Russ has been in quick game. Now, there's some larger commentary there at large, because like when teams increase their pass rate year to year, that's the bucket that they're tapping into the most. It's really non-efficient passes. And then like only like 15 quarterbacks are actually generating above average or a positive EPA in quick game. So yeah, you're only really replacing inefficient runs with inefficient passes for the most part. In Seattle's case, Chris Carson is actually outproducing Russ in quick game. If you compare the right runs to the right passes, but Russ is still average there in my opinion. So we'll see what happens there. The other big thing to look for is, does Hackett have a more comprehensive drop back game? I don't think so, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's only so much we think you can do with Russ in terms of the drop back game and how wide reaching that can be because of the limitations to his approach. The other thing I'm interested in is who's going to be the sort of safety. Is Ryan Neal going to come back, or is Josh Jones, because he played great, is he going to be the third safety? And we believe they'll be using three safety looks a lot more often. Defense, we have a quick time to look at the Broncos defense, and this wasn't a very good run defending unit last year. They've added DJ Jones from the 49ers, and he had quite a few tackles for loss last year. I don't know how like Seattle's going to try and run on this front. I'm not sure how well that will go. And then the back seven, they're running a very similar kind of.
Yeah.
It's so funny how they fired Fangio, and then they just pick a Fangio disciple. But that is the way the league's going in Ejiro Evero. And back seven wise, I feel like they'll use Satan a bit like how Ramsey was used. If there was going to be a difference where maybe it's more middle field open, less middle field closed, like they tried last year, for accenting the pass rush, but more middle field open stuff again. And then Surtain perhaps shadowing Metcalf across the field, because he is kind of that guy, or being the lock guy on the backside of coverages to allow you to play front side halves. And then Ronald Darby, that's questionable, but then like how good you have to be if you're, playing a cloud. But it's a very talented looking secondary, I'd say, overall. Justin Simmons. K'Waun Williams is nice as well, actually, from San Francisco.
The macro game plan is interesting to me, because I feel like I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle opens with their gun package and stays in it for a while and see if they can actually move the ball. And like any team would try to do this, don't get me wrong, but try to get an early lead so that they can get the game state, like as opposed to playing like short in the game, play small. I feel like they're going to try to play big, play fast, so that the Broncos feel pressed to come out and gun and stay in gun and keep them away from their play action concepts, and get them out of what Hackett probably wants to establish, right?
That's deep level thinking. Do you think coaches coach like that? Possibly.
They I think they definitely think macro and micro, right? But so
Right.
but within Seattle though, I feel like when they are an under center, they will run at such a high rate when an under center, because they're playing a team that will play like we know, like Seattle does, quarters and half quarter. They want to force purely quarters across the board, so that their underneath defenders aren't matching in the seams and stuff, so that they can get more middle of the field play action concepts like, drift or strike, right? They can get Lockett running outbreaking stuff, where he gets one-on-one outbreaking stuff. So I feel like they'll do that just to influence the shell, so that they can run the specific play action concepts they want to run against this defense. They don't want them in half quarter. And because then that's harder to defend. Like half quarter is great for defending a lot of play action concepts, right?
Yeah.
Especially pocket play action. Well, it's good at defending a lot of things, but if teams like to play half quarter in nickel. So what this is just about influencing personnel, so that they can run the specific concepts that they think they can have an advantage with. When in gun though,
12 personnel the heck out of them, and then
exactly.
hopefully we get Gino hitting enough of the middle field open digs, the nice little beaters.
Cook,
yeah.
I think Lockett can win them this game, but I don't know if that will happen. I don't.
Well, if you're matched, because if you're matched with base, you can get him on a linebacker as well if you work it right. And if Surtan's paying attention to DK Metcalf, which I think might happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Surtan's he's kind of in that as good as he wants to be category, but then DK is a whole different level of height and weight.
Right. Now, when they do go into gun, they know Seattle isn't going to gun run if they've done their homework. So they will be matching with nickel zone, especially like on base downs. I think that'll be their base call. Like,
yeah, it'll be like 3 deep, 3 under fire zone of Williams, like he just did in San Francisco for ages. And then,
So when that happens, I don't know if Seattle will have a lot of luck with I don't know if we'll see Dagger this week, right? Or at least drop back, get Dagger.
Because the fire zone kills it.
The fire zone and the vertical hook play in half quarter. So I think we'll see. Well, I think what we will see though is like a lot of arches or F posts, because the space that half quarter can give at the first level, get those guys going.
Interesting thing that your friend Brock Heward mentioned was that he expects Seattle to run more RPOs, and that Mike Pereira has said that the league is loosening the officiating of downfield blocking, and that they're going to widen that window, which is absolutely disgusting, by the way. That's like that's literally what makes college football unwatchable. You can't play defense. It's not fair.
They're trying to keep Tua Tagovailoa employed is what they're trying to do. The league is putting all their chips in that basket.
Interesting.
And maybe
it's Mike McDaniel's world. We're just living in it.
Yeah.
But that is one element that we haven't seen in the preseason. Well, I've seen tiny bits of it in the preseason from Gino, but that as an additional layer, as like an easy extension of the run game, and really that would activate the gun runs. That's kind of replacing the gun runs.
Yeah. So it will. Yeah, I don't know. What do we think predictions wise? The three of us.
Yeah, so we were asked actually. Here, let me.
I think Seattle covers. I don't. The spread is 6.5 points. Broncos win.
Seahawks 23, Broncos 20.
All right, I like that you're see now. I totally am convinced the Broncos will have. Russ will be fine this year. Broncos will have a better season, but I do think Russ won't have a great game, and I think that it will be a 1-score game. How do you predict that?
I feel like this is going to be one of those south end zone last second, like just because like we suddenly, or we think that suddenly now that Russ is gone, like the Seahawks are just going to stop playing in weird games. No.
Yeah.
Also, Russ is in this game, so it's going to be weird.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird, and it's on Monday night, and they're wearing those action green.
Look,
uniforms.
both Pete and Hackett are weirdos too.
Yeah.
So
completely weird. Yeah.
the whole game's gonna have weird energy to it, nationally televised. I'm gonna go Broncos.
Come on, you want to. You want to.
I'm gonna go Broncos 19, Seattle 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
19. Right. See that? If the defense holds them to 19 and Seattle only gets 16, I'm slightly disappointed there.
Yeah, me too.
What's the over-under total? I imagine it's quite high because I think the perception.
Everyone thinks the Broncos are scoring a lot of points, which it's just the matchups aren't there, man.
It is 50.5.
2 rookie cornerbacks potentially, or two inexperienced cornerbacks. That's not
in a quarters world, in a too high world. The cornerback has been devalued.
The safety's important.
It's all about the safeties. But first of all, that cracks me up because we talk about cornerbacks as a premium position. But at the same time, what is also dominating the discourse is how you got too high numbers in the box, numbers in the passing game. Do we not see how those two things are in conflict? Yeah. If corners are premium, then you should, and you have 2 corners and they're good, you should be playing cover 1. You shouldn't be playing too high. No.
Okay.
All right.
Seahawks 28. Broncos 14.
Dude, could you imagine? Could you imagine though for a second?
I can imagine.
And the Broncos, that's like a weird thing. That's not 2 touchdowns. That's like something weird's happened.
Yeah. I think there's going to be some growing pains. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of growing pains for the Seahawks, especially with like the young guys that they're potentially starting. But there's also going to be growing pains for Russ, and like, Russ needs time. We know that Russ needs time. Russ needs time to get comfortable.
And Hackett needs time. He hasn't been.
Russ, like we saw what he did in that 2020's first half stretch when he came in and just started slinging the heck out of the ball. With defense is not sort of getting used to it, and defense is rusty from the COVID impacted off season. But yeah,
we have to remember though, Seattle has more continuity on defense than people are. The DC is an in-house promotion. Like, come on. There's more continuity than there isn't on defense. They're returning 9 of, like, if you include nickel, like 9 of 12 starters. Or 9 of their 12 starters were on the team last year.
All right, let's take it one step further real quick before we hop off, and we're way over time. But let's get some like actual like because I think we were actually asked to do like some highlight predictions as well. So going off of our score predictions, how do we get there? How do we get to those scores? I'm saying strip sack for Shelby Harris.
That would be great.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling the Shelby Harris revenge game.
I think my 14, I said that was weird from the Broncos. I think it is like a 2-point conversion, so for 8. And then they struggle throughout and they start kicking field goals and they get the ball ran down their throat. And they get shut out. They get shut out in the second half.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go Draymond Jones. It's 2nd and 7. 2nd and 7. Draymond Jones gets a good get off and a clean forklift into a rip and gets the corner at Gabe Jackson. And clean to the backfield. Everyone else is blocking well. So Draymond Jones, like his rush stands out on the broadcast a lot. Geno tucks and runs and it goes for like a 30-yard scramble.
No, on a zone read or
on his own, like he realizes the play's dead instantly. Gabe Jackson gets whooped. And Geno takes off and gets a 30-yard gain. And then the next play, throws a little 7-yard out to Tyler Lockett for a touchdown.
Wow.
All right. Geno Smith puts up more rushing yardage than Russell Wilson in this game.
I can see
Also,
it.
my other prediction, Seattle will their early down neutral state pass rate win probabilities between
those who
50 and
track.
85% will be 54.25%.
I like it. All right.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
there you go. Clearly, the Seahawks are going to win on Monday night because we said it so, and therefore,
Well, 2/3 of us.
Well,
did.
2/3 of us, which is a majority. So
yeah.
you know,
Overall,
and clearly, you know, we're believers. Griff is not.
yeah. Way
Griff
to
is
cope
now.
And
with
I'm
not
Mr.
even.
Cope, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Griff
clearly
is
not.
clearly-
We thought you were the
thought, but-
volcano guy, but
you just
you know someone.
you're exposing yourself as a fraud all day long.
Look, I win because I never said Russ was bad. I never said that. I was on record for saying I want Russ to stay a Seahawk, but I win if the offense looks exactly the same because that vindicates Pete Carroll. What's that word I'm looking for? When you're looking back. Oh my God, my brain isn't working. It would vindicate Pete Carroll because I meant the whole Pete Carroll premise was not bad.
Okay.
Whatever.
Whatever. We'll be back.
Friars are so dumb. We're just trying to watch football.
We'll be back live very late on Monday night, where hopefully the Seahawks have played well. That's what we can all hope for. And until then, please like this video and retweet it on Twitter. Follow the podcast at Seattle Overload. Follow everyone involved with the show, which is the 3 names up on your screen here. And also be prepared with our exciting Odyssey news, the RSS feed, which, as you may know, I have been messing around with accidentally. That will be moving to an Odyssey thing as soon as I know what the RSS feed will be. I will post it, and you can go follow it. It won't change you. Like I said, Odyssey, they know what they're doing, so that's nice. So it will just be a quick matter of resubscribing, reviewing, and all that good stuff. But thank you again. Like I said, it wouldn't happen without you guys. We really appreciate your support. Some great questions tonight. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them as well, but we see you in the comments, and it's lovely stuff. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. And yeah, next show is going to be our first on Odyssey. Looking forward to it.
That's right.
All right, let's fly. See you guys on Monday.
Dude, let's fly.